state representatives. We have a full house today. We have State Representative Jim Hoops, David Thomas, and Bill Roemer. Welcome to Message from the House.
Thank you.
I can call you guys the property tax trio, right?
I've been called lots worse.
Oh my goodness.
Lower
Wow.
property tax trio.
Property tax trio.
I keep reminding Thomas all of that.
Lower.
Oh, okay.
Lower.
Oh yeah, trio.
No spikes.
Yes.
No spikes, all of the key phrases that we've heard this GA in talking about this. I will just start by asking Representative Roemer if you could just explain from a broader view what has prompted this wave of property tax reform bills, specifically this General Assembly. I know this isn't a problem that started overnight.
Yeah. What we've seen is huge increases in property taxes across the state of Ohio. I chaired last General Assembly the Joint Property Tax Study Commission, and we came up with 21 recommendations. What we have done this General Assembly is we've used a number of those recommendations in individual bills. We've crafted at least 5 and actually many, many more in my Ways and Means Committee, which I chair. The governor also put together his own property tax study commission. The nice thing is that they ratified many of the things that we had done in our property tax study commission. Unfortunately, in the budget, the governor vetoed 4 very important provisions that would have reduced property taxes for many of the folks, seniors, families, and everybody else across Ohio. We now have bills that will handle those. That we believe that the governor believes strongly now that what we did was the right thing. We did override one of the vetoes already. We have bills to handle the other vetoes and to go over and above that to benefit our families here in Ohio.
I will say that it definitely was a testament to the resiliency between you all really putting your brains together and focusing on this issue because there are bigger things at stake, right?
Well, very much so. And it's wonderful to have Rep. Hoops and Rep. Thomas working with me on these things because they have massive amounts of expertise, having been previous auditors.
Yeah, I think that was the key because with this issue, the first thing was the challenge is to get people to understand what actually happened during these last 5 or 6 years. And I always call it the perfect storm. And what you had happening is during the last 5 years, values of property just skyrocketed. People were buying property, homes for twice as much than what they were before. You had other issues. The pandemic played a role in it, I feel. It increased the materials to build homes, lack of housing in the state. You had outside of state investors coming in, buying up property. And all those sales had to be used because of the Constitution to determine what the values were going to be, and that happens every 3 years. So that was the issue there. And then on the other side, you had what we call the 920, and that basically kept property from spiking up when values went up over the years. Well, that was put in place back in the 70s, but now what occurred, the other issue that was put in the 80s is what you call the 20 mil floor for schools. And so as the values in the past would go up, the millage would go down, so you still receive that same amount of money on voted millage. But when the schools put in this 20 mil floor, when the school millage hit 20, as the values went up, it stayed at 20, and that's where you saw the big increase there, in the amount of taxes that people were paying. And the schools did nothing wrong. I mean, they were just following what the law allowed them to do. And so we got together, and I think the good thing is we got the schools, we got the counties, everybody involved to take a look at this, because this just didn't happen overnight. I mean, we've been looking at this, with the Auditors Association, the Treasurers Association, and bringing all these groups together to figure out, okay, what is the best option in dealing with this issue? And so there were other options that we looked at, but we just felt this was the best one, to go forward with, and that's what we did.
Definitely sounds like the perfect storm.
Yeah, and to combine kind of those two thoughts and ideas, essentially anger, frustration for the last 5 years is due to not the voters approving those much higher property tax bills, but essentially these unvoted increases. And so that kind of summarizes our action steps as the legislature has been to essentially tamp down, remove, calm any of those unvoted increases moving forward. If the voters want to increase their bill, the voters have the ability to do so. But where that big frustrations come from, the unvoted side, that's where a lot of our action has been focused on.
Absolutely. And I want to key in on House Bill 124, Rep. Thomas, that is officially on its way to the governor's desk. It passed out of the Senate. So talk me through what that legislation does.
So in a quick nutshell, this bill targets the value side. It asks the question, what is the correct data to help determine then the property values that are used for our tax bills? It says that the county auditor knows best their community, and they essentially should start that process with which sales are valid to use for property value changes and which ones are not. Representative Thomas Hall and I joint sponsored this bill. It's actually received 0 no votes. It's been bipartisan all the way through, and we're very hopeful that this will essentially allow for better valuation processes across the state, especially in areas where you're seeing flipping of homes, you're seeing changes of that process, and just needing that better data at the local level.
And let me just add, this is a bill that I started working on even before I was in the General Assembly.
Wow.
It was one of the recommendations of our Joint Property Tax Study Commission. But starting in 2018, we recognized that the auditors, and like I said again, luckily we have 2 former auditors here, are the ones that really have access to the best data. And rather than have a bureaucrat at the Ohio Department of Tax make the determination, it ought to be those local auditors, and there always is that appeal process.
Yep.
So we are hoping that everything moves forward as quickly as possible because we think it's the right thing to do for Ohio.
Yeah, and that hits the value side. A lot of our other bills are more on the tax rate side and tax process side.
I mean, I think it's very important that the county auditors and the Department of Taxation work closely together on this. And I think this bill still allows that and requires that, and hopefully we can get it across the line where the governor signs it and then just work it through, because there's got to be some give and take in that issue when we deal with this.
And I want to stick with you, Rep. Hoops. 186 was one of the 4+ bills that passed the House this GA. Tackle Stop the Spike.
Well, what we found, Rep. Thomas and I, we talked about this even the year before when he was county auditor, with the auditors, trying to work with them on what we saw was a solution to this issue. And basically what it does is, and again, it's very complicated because you have to look at a couple things. One is not all the counties are reappraised and triennial updates the same time. There's like 3 different counties or 3 different years where 1/3 of the counties do it this year, another third, another third. So that was an issue. The other issue is not all the schools were at the 20 mil floor. So we zeroed in on what we felt was the issue, and that was schools that were at the 20 mil floor. And so what this bill does basically, instead of what was occurring now, is that these schools at the 20 mil floor, if the values went up 35%, that those taxes would go up that amount too. And so because, again, it stayed at the 20 mil floor. And so what we did is we put in place where it would be based on the inflation rate, which could be around 9, 10, 11%, and going on in the future. I mean, we're hoping the inflation stays low because that creates other issues then. So that's what this bill does, is you're not going to get that big spike. You're going to keep it at a level, there's still going to be some growth because there's always, the inflation issue. And so we wanted to put that in there so that schools could still see some growth, but yet at the same time, not these spikes that were happening.
And talk me through the provision. I know it was very important for you and all of you to really hold the schools harmless.
Yeah, what we did there, when the bill originally was introduced, we basically were just looking at 1/3 of those counties, that it was going to impact right away. And we wanted to have a bigger impact sooner. And so what we did is we went back so that all 88 counties would be affected by this. Well, by doing that, there was some issues with the schools, had some concerns because of their budgets and what they were going to receive, what they were expecting to receive. And so we went back, and again, the chairman, under his leadership, I mean, we were on number 19 version of the bill, because there were just so many changes. And again, we talked with everybody, and we went out and talked about 186, the new 186, where we'd utilize all 88 counties. We went and talked to the superintendents. They had some concerns. We came back and did a huddle, basically, and talked about what can we do so that we're balanced, where we help the taxpayer, but at the same time help the schools in this issue. And that's why we put money in, and we found some dollars in the holiday sales tax fund to utilize those dollars to reimburse the schools, not reimburse, but to give money to the schools during these next 2 years.
So I do think that the bill answers that ultimate philosophical question of essentially us limiting that the government can receive more than inflation with a vote of the people. But without a vote, the government is then limited to inflation increases. And that's what 186 really kind of at a base level does. We start it next year. That savings over the next 3 years is a difference of $1.7 billion.
Yep.
That's how much higher Ohioans would be paying in their property taxes if we did not pass this new version of 186.
And that's what we really have to get across to the people of Ohio, because it's not like it's not going to occur because we put this bill in place. Now, if we wouldn't have done anything, you would have seen another 1.7. So a lot of times people say, well, I didn't experience that. Well, because we kept it from happening in the future, and that'll be very important to let people know that, hey, we listened, we heard, we listened. It was a kitchen table issue, and this is what we did to balance with the taxpayers, but then also the services that not only schools give out for the education of our future, leaders, but also you're looking at townships. I know we'll talk about a couple other bills that, with townships and villages and cities, and it'll affect everybody.
But also next year, 5 out of 6 Ohioans will see that credit on their bill.
Yep.
So bills will go down next year, thankfully, and then it kicks into essentially decreases of potential increases for most Ohioans.
And that's a very important point, because this bill will take effect halfway through next year. So people aren't going to see the effect January 1st, but they'll see it in July. And I just want to thank the auditor, the county auditors, and the county treasurers, because they're going to have to make some changes in their processes because of what this bill did. And we didn't want to do it that way, but because of how the process works, because of the 90 days, you have to wait 90 days before the bill becomes effective, and all these things, that was the earliest we could put it in.
Thank you for explaining that. And I want to piggyback off of that with House Bill 335, which more or less boosts the efforts of 186. Rep. Thomas, talk me through 335.
So 335 does the exact same philosophical change. It says that government should not receive more than inflation without a vote of the people. It's not just schools that have received more in unvoted taxation over the last 5 years. Unfortunately, it's also our counties, our cities, our villages, our townships. And so the other unvoted part of our tax bill, that inside millage piece, which is the base level of taxation across Ohio, we're also capping that revenue to inflation as well. So regardless if you are in a 20 mil floor school district or you're not, or if you're in an urban area or a rural area, your bill will not spike higher than inflation. So the last 5 years will not continue. And that was important for us to impact every single Ohioan, either through House Bill 335, House Bill 186, or together.
And then we have 309, which, Rep. Roemer, I'm sorry, did you have something to add?
I was going to talk about 309.
Yeah, I know. I was like, okay, I hear someone starting to speak. 309, you got it, sir.
excited.
Talk me through it.
I am excited because this is one of the recommendations that came out of our Property Tax Study Commission. It's in each county, there's a commission that reviews whether items should be placed on the ballot or not, and it reviews theoretically, if those agencies are receiving more money than they need to operate. And there's been a lot of pushback. Some counties, as an example, Athens County felt that the County Budget Commission had no power whatsoever. Whatever they received, they had to immediately put on the ballot. Others, like Union County, felt exactly the opposite. The way we read the ORC, we believed that Union County was correct, but what we wanted to do is we wanted to put language in specifically that said that the County Budget Commission in 86 of the 88 counties, it's the auditor, it is the prosecutor, and it's the treasurer, would elect, as local elected officials, would have the ability to review what goes on the ballot and what is being collected, making sure that there's no over collection. One of the things that we saw in going through this whole process is some municipalities, some schools have huge budget surpluses, others don't. So that would be one of the main factors there. So I'm excited about this in that it will bring uniformity across the state of Ohio.
Yeah, the voters approve levies for services. They approve the maximum amount they're willing to spend. But if the government can do that service for less, they should. And that's kind of the role of the Budget Commission, is to be that check and balance for the taxpayer to try to make it as low as possible.
And they do it at the local level, not at the state level. The local level where people know a lot better than what we do here in Columbus on what the needs are.
A lot of collaboration for sure for all of this. I want to touch now on 129, which deals with the 20 mil floor and fixed sum levies. Rep. Thomas, do you want to talk me through that as well?
So 129, essentially, the goal of that is to lift 237 schools off the 20 mil floor. When they're on the 20 mil floor, as Rep. Hoops explained earlier, they get spikes in unvoted taxation because the tax rate stays the same, values go up. By lifting these 237 schools off that 20 mil floor, during their next revaluation, when their value goes up maybe by 30%, their tax bill won't even actually go up with the inflation side. It will stay largely the same. We do that by counting all of the levies that the voters have approved for that school towards their minimum guaranteed tax rate. It's essentially truth and guaranteed taxation. And we give the schools kind of a runway to allow them to continue to collect in certain revenues right now, but they're just no longer at the 20 mil floor. That way they're not getting that spike in unvoted taxation, and we're able to prevent any of those windfalls moving forward.
And I want to ask, I know I heard a dollar amount earlier, but comprehensively, about how many dollars, billions of dollars in savings would all of these combined save our taxpayers?
I mean, it's large. It's right around 2.4, 2.5 billion over the next 3 years. And what that really means, as Rep. Hoop said earlier, some of that is actual decreases in tax bills next year. Some of that is a decrease on the increase that we're expecting over just the next 3 years. But there's a lot of unknowns too. The Budget Commission could decrease in certain areas as well. I think 129, for example, has a lot of kind of question marks over how much do values increase, what does that impact really of removing those 237 schools off. But ultimately, as we all kind of know, the voters control a good part of their tax bill. And so we've hit on the unvoted taxation side, but it's up to the voter to decide really how high their tax bill is, what services do they want to support, and they hold in their hands what their taxes look like moving forward.
And one of the things when you look at this, if you put all of these bills together, we've talked about 5 of them already, it is, I believe, the most comprehensive property tax reform. Some people say since the 1970s. I believe it was even before that. House Bill 920, as Rep. Hoops mentioned, came in the 1970s. But that was one facet. This is a comprehensive reform, and it really does stop the spikes. And as Rep. Thomas has mentioned multiple times, it's the unvoted increases that most people have had consternation. We have addressed that also. So this is one of the largest property tax reforms basically in the last 100 years.
And I can tell you, we're not done. We have a lot more we have to do. These are the biggest steps that we can say the last 5 years are wrong. We have corrected. Had these 5 bills passed back in 2018, 2019, we would not be having this conversation today because our Ohioans would not have been hurt as they have over the last 5 years. But there still is a lot more reforms that need to happen to the system.
And then I want to ask for the group as well, what kind of message do you think that this sends to your communities, our communities.
Well, I think what it says is we listened, we heard, we reacted to it, and I think it's just something that we want to continue to work on, and we tried to be balanced as far as with the taxpayer and with and where those monies are going, because all the property taxes that are collected, and we were told $24 billion of property taxes, none of that comes to Columbus. It stays locally for the services to use for the services in their communities across the state. And so we tried to be balanced as we worked on this legislation.
Yeah, I think a big piece of it is us essentially saying, never again. What happened? Never again. We've tackled the unvoted side. We've given the tools to the voters, more transparency, more decision-making power for their aspect. And we know that there's much more work to be done. But I think this is a really strong, I think in 11 months, what we've been able to do already. And we still have a whole year left of this General Assembly and work to do.
Representatives, thank you. I want to quickly talk about our social media. You can follow us on the Ohio House GOP Caucus on Facebook, Ohio House _GOP on Instagram, and OHR GOP Caucus on Twitter. You can subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Representative Jim Hoops, Representative David Thomas, and Representative Bill Roemer, thank you so much for coming on to talk about this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is fun.